part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Producing While Asian, and we're now in season 3, and we're going through Asian, Pacific American, Native Hawaiian History Month. I think I got that wrong. It's AANHPI month, so Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander month. I'm not even going to edit that out because everybody deserves all the shout outs. And we're working through conversations with producers of the Tony-nominated Broadway show, Here Lies Love. And today's conversation is with Cynthia Cherish Malaran, or others like to know her as DJ CherishTheLuv. She is a multi-hyphenate artist. She is a DJ. She is an amazing human, and she's a producer and just event organizer and all around jack of all trades in the arts. And she has an incredible story, and I'm excited for her to share that with you today in our conversation. And so I'm not going to give it all away. I want you to just jump right in and learn a little bit about producing and what it means to her and us, and how the market's changing and how that affects our industry as a whole. So Cynthia had a lot of amazing things to say, and here it is. So without any further ado, Cynthia Cherish Malaran, aka DJ CherishTheLuv, here today on Producing While Asian. Enjoy. Hey, how are you, Cynthia? Thank you so much for being part of Producing While Asian. Welcome.
Hey, Don Mike. It is so nice to connect with you here and share everything we're going to share today. I'm psyched.
I'm so pumped. I'm working our way through our producing cohort, and it's so awesome to have you here, and the conversations have been robust and amazing, and I'm excited to talk to you today. So you're here because I want my audience to meet you and to learn about you and to know where you came from, how you got involved, and kind of your story of how you got to today. So why don't we start there? If you can just talk to our audience a little bit about who is Cynthia Cherish Malaran.
Hey, everyone. It is such a pleasure to share my story with you and introduce myself to you. I am Cynthia Cherish Malaran, also known as DJ CherishTheLuv. I'm a producer and DJ, and now co-producer of Tony-nominated Broadway's Here Lies Love. Yeah. Isn't that so great to say? Like, I have to just keep practicing that mouthful because,
right?
Like, we have to say it.
And I know people were just saying like, oh, the show is nominated because we didn't get Best Musical, so we're not nominated. But I'm like, no, we're like, the whole thing is nominated. It's Tony nominated.
I'm sorry. I don't accept that because I'm a DJ producer. I work in sound. If we were nominated in sound, I couldn't be happier. And we were. So
so sorry to interrupt. But yes, we are co-producers of the Tony nominated Here Lies Love.
And maybe by the time people hear this episode or beyond, Tony winning.
Maybe. Fingers crossed.
We'll find out. So I just am so grateful to all of the pieces that brought us together. How community. This is what brought us together and what we're going to continue doing from here out. I keep saying with Sige. So Sige is our gathering, our monthly event gathering that we continued post Here Lies Love's closing to keep the community together and to keep those of us who wanted to keep working with, like super fans and fellow co-producers just active. It was heartbreaking to close, but I kept telling folks, maybe this is the beginning of the next part. And it is. Yeah. So I keep pushing the idea that this is not over. This is just the beginning. Just the beginning. And if I think back to the beginning, which is about, for me, this time last year, I got the first phone call about jumping on board. So the interesting thing is, maybe about 10, 11 years ago, I guess it was, I was invited to see Here Lies Love at the Public. So I live in New York. I'm bi-coastal work-wise, but I'm based out of New York. And when I was invited, I was like, hell no. I'm going to not going to go see the show. About what? About who? I was like, do not involve me in this. I don't want to see that. I'm not spending a dime on a ticket on such a topic. I grew up in the States. My parents definitely were hurting about what was happening in the Philippines in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
They would shield us from it, but whatever would come through on TV once in a while, like Koreakino and things like that, I could tell there was something hard and big and painful going on. But I never got to know, more of the story. I just knew the narrative of what was happening and how our people were hurting for decades. So when I hear there's a musical entertainment on the topic of these two people, I was like, oh no.
Oh no.
So this time last year, I get a call from our wonderful Giselle, our community liaison, friend to us all, Giselle Tongi, is how it's really pronounced. But she tells me about this show coming to Broadway, and I was thinking in my head, this is a lie.
Like that show?
Still that show? My God, no, I want nothing to do with this. Then she tells me more about it and who's involved. She mentions Clint Ramos. She mentions Jose Antonio Vargas. She's just telling me what they're building. So I said to myself, okay, these people are not bad people. And they're like Pulitzer Prize winning people. Let me be open to being wrong about what I think this show is about. Let me find out before I accept this incredible invitation to become a Broadway co-producer. And I said, this isn't coming to me for no reason. Maybe it's just a big test for me to learn how to learn more.
Yeah.
So I do meet with Diana DeMena, our wonderful lead producer, and one woman on the lead producing team who I look up to. She's just so incredible. I meet with her first. She's telling me about it, and she says, with Cherish, you are in New York City, one of the most powerful creatives right now, so you should be part of this team. And I said, again, I need to know what this is about. So I get to go with Giselle on opening night of previews. And by the end of it, of course, I am in tears. Yeah. I am feeling my arm go like this, I'm not even controlling my arm, making Laban, going up into the air and tears flowing down my face and watching this all unfold. And when it was over, I get chills right now because that feeling of that's what this is about. Mm-hmm. It overwhelmed me. And I said, this needs to be out there. We need to tell this story. And I went home and filled out all the legal paperwork, we had to do.
Yep. Of course.
I am on board 100%.
Amazing.
And that's how I got here. And then I met you and Rob Lackey and everybody else on this incredible Here Lies Love co-producing and production team. Just gems. Everyone coming from a different corner of the world and the experience of creativity and producing. And here we are, and we did it. We didn't close, we completed.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it. It's I loved what you said when we closed, which was we just reached the top of a mountain.
Yeah.
And there's the journey's not done though yet. It's we've reached the top of this mountain and let's look forward to what's coming, And because there's so much.
Thank you so much for reading that post. Mm-hmm. The folks who read that post, of course I had feelings and emotions and felt all the things. I felt are we not good enough? How are we closing? Why don't people like us? All this stuff. Mm-hmm. But then I blinked really hard. I was like, what am I also missing here? Because for every bad feeling I've ever had, there was also another viewpoint that I could see. And not in a way that I was like, let me gaslight myself into joy
Oh,
or in toxic positivity, but just
right.
like, let's see what else is also happening.
Mhm.
And I realized in that week before I posted about the mountaintop that like, actually, we're not crashing in a plane that's like downward. We were climbing this mountaintop the whole time. And on closing evening, which was what a night, right? We
What
were
a
at the
night.
top of the mountain and we had this point of view that was exquisite and that we all had and shared. So I was like, what a place to be. And I started to see closing as a completion. And then I became very much at peace with it. I said,
Nice.
this was it. Everything has a cycle, right?
Mhm.
And having gotten very close with people who work with many Broadway shows since then, yet another gift of this experience, I learned that every show has to close.
Yeah, it's
It's
true.
just part of the nature of the incredible creative beast. So I said, damn, we did it. So now what do we do next? We do things like this and we continue the community. We talk about producing. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm drooling. I love it that much.
But it's like what, not to sound like Thelma and Louise, but it's like you get to the top of the mountain and this precipice. And what do you do in this case? We all jumped. We jumped, and we're landing in all of these new projects and these new places and partnerships and opportunities. And like I said in my interview with Georgina, it's just like I wouldn't have 90% of what I'm doing right now if it wasn't for our experience together on here.
Incredible.
And
Incredible.
we're all still collaborating. There's still other things. Seagay is around, which is like so much credit to you for getting a team together and making that happen, and other cross points for our team to come back together and collaborate. So I think the real winning here was we got this community out of it, a community of what Georgina described as onlys who finally got to be in a room together and realized that we could all work together. And
Oh,
so,
that's so beautiful. See,
mhm,
you're East Coast, Georgina's East Coast, I'm East Coast. We have not met each other. That
right.
is, that says to me so much. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
West Coast folks are different. Like what the West Coast Filipino experience versus the East Coast Filipino experience is so much more community on the West Coast side. And we just haven't had that on the East Coast for whatever 10, 20 reasons. But here we are, and we can join forces, and we're all so powerful in all the
Right.
things that we do and accomplish and stuff. So,
Mhm.
what do you want next? Is what I keep asking myself.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, like, we can have the world. Like, we can have
Yeah.
whatever we want. Like, as working together is great. And I think to your point, I think the East Coast experience is different because it's more, at least this is my thought. It was more about, like, in our Filipino communities on the East Coast, it's more about almost survival, where it's like
Yeah.
we're in a community and a portion of the country that's so much the majority that doesn't look like us. So we're just like not forced, but we find each other and we stick in these small groups within our state, within our country, or our neighborhoods, our counties, whatever. On the West Coast, there's so many brown people and so many Filipino people, especially like it's the largest Filipino community outside of Manila in the world. So like it's so much easier to find that community on the West Coast because like you're going to like, you know, 10 cotillions a year and like, 8 debuts and like all this, like it's all there.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably, partially part of it, but I love that this experience was able to bring the coasts together. And so the West Coast folks were able to bring that sense of community to the East Coast. And we were able to say, like, here's what we've done on the East Coast to really keep Filipino culture alive in the scarcity of it in these communities. And so that's been really great. So yeah, I mean, it all boils down to community and our cohort together.
What's up, everyone? Chase Smith here, host of the Chase Smith podcast, and my podcast reflects who I am. My hobbies, my interests, my passions, my curiosities, my careers, my questions, and my family. I'll spend time talking about all types of sports, movies, TV shows, trending news stories, and other cultural events, and even faith. This is who I am, and I hope I can get to know you as well. Join me on the Chase Smith podcast and let's have some thought-provoking conversations only on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. Listen, it is beyond time for you to join a book club. I know you've been thinking about it and everyone's doing it. Here's how Books with Brooks works. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Classics like Stephen King's The Shining, debut novels like We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and tons of other compelling, life-changing stories, one book and 1 month at a time. So come read along with us and then listen in.
So I know you haven't always been a producer, but do you feel like you've been producing, like, what after this experience, do you feel like you look back and you're like, oh, wow, like I have been producing forever. I just didn't know it was called that, in terms of your career, especially as a DJ.
Absolutely. I mean, I have been organizing events for a decade, but never thought of myself as a producer and would, well, not in the show sense. As far as music producing, that's a different story, but a show producer, event producer, I didn't realize that what I was doing was that. So sometimes you need to, get a title and then you're like, oh, here I go. Let me update my email signature and, live this now. And that's great. So, because now I'm like, yeah, this took quite many years and a lot of investment of time, money, tears, and energy to get to this place. And I think also culturally, sometimes we don't see or own up or utilize our assets, our talents. We're kind of humble, I say. So we as a people tend to be humble, right? And even when we have peers who say, no, you're totally this, what do we do? Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, deflect. I'm too old for this now. It's like we have to step in it. And at our age, we are what I like to call the young elders. So we have to inspire those who are younger than us to express and create and produce what's in their minds and their hearts. Do you remember a time when you had lots of things on your mind and you wanted to create, but somehow you just stopped?
Yeah. I mean, it's because you get, and tell me if you agree or not, you get to a point in being an other in a community that, and not a community, but society that wants to other you so often that you get tired. You get tired and you're like, well, I'm just going to autopilot and I'm just going to stop trying to invent and innovate and in our case, create, because it's just easier to go and audition for the show and play the bit role and just do that. Or it's easier to just DJ this kind of a corporate event and, make that money and just live out my life, but it's like in all of it, if we have one life, if we have just one, and you take that point of view, 40 years goes by and you can't go back. And I mean, that's why I'm here, and I feel like it's something similar for you, where it's like, for me, I saw myself in year 2 of a very cubicle-y, office-y kind of job, and I'll do it at the same Christmas party for the second year in a row. And I know there are people that are at these things for years and years, but at year 2, I said to my worker friend, I was like, I will not be here next year. I was like, this is not my destiny, because something in me rang and was like, no, like, have one life, make the most. So go out and do what you want to do, which is being in the arts and being creative. And I feel like maybe you've had a similar experience in life at some point where you've probably hit that wall of like, oh, I'm going to just be, but then you realized, fuck no, like I need to go and do me and live life to the fullest,
Absolutely. I have spent a lot of time, energy, and my own resources in nursing other people's dreams. And I paused for a moment and I said, what if I did that to my own dreams? What if I supported my own visions as much as support other people, as much as I support other people's visions? Now, I'm not going to lie, that wasn't an instant hell yeah green light, because we're just fed all kinds of not good enough, not good enough. And we have to learn how to shake that. And all of that stuff, the kind of the invisible glass ceiling we put on ourselves isn't our fault. It comes from culture, it comes from trauma, it comes from all kinds of stuff. It comes from immigrant mentality and scarcity and whiteness versus brownness. There's so many reasons, but my heart kept wanting to not keep making other people's dreams come true. I was like, that's great too, but how about me? That took, a solid 25 years of working for other people to start really thinking I had self-worth too in the game of creating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people nowadays, especially now that it's so global and you can access anything via the internet, we didn't have that really, that there shouldn't be anything holding people back at this stage. And I love that. I love that. Like, what are we going to create next? It just feels like it's possible. Versus maybe 10 years ago felt like, oh, barriers and always money.
Right. And geography, like, before there really was this globalization of the world, you kind of stayed in your country, or you stayed in your state or your region or whichever, or whatever was accessible to you. There was no really dreaming beyond that, unless you were somebody that had like unlimited resources to like do all these things, So it really was kind of gate kept by the people that could. But I think
let's look at this though. This is an interesting thing I realized recently, that even if you have unlimited resources, doesn't mean your spirit is healthy and happy enough to actually actualize.
That's true.
And there are people who don't have the resources and have the drive to somehow make it work. Mm-hmm. So I want to study that. I want to figure out what is that drive that makes someone go from an idea in here to presenting it to the people. Mm-hmm. I want to know what that formula is. I want to bottle it. I want to drink it every day. I want to share it with you.
Yeah. I mean, it is a worthwhile question, because it's like, what motivates people? And, there are different things, obviously, like to some degree, it's money, to some degree, it's reputation, to some degree, it's, material things. But in other cases like us, it's the community factor. Like I think what motivated us throughout Here Lies Love was creating that community, not just for ourselves, but for our fellow Filipinos, but then our fellow AA and HPI people, to know that you can do this too. And also that while we did have a historic number of Filipinos in our cohort, we also had other Asian people on our team who were part of it too. So we really, promoted the intercultural producing as well, and intercultural relationships. And it all really kind of came together in that sense. So yeah, I think
here's my question that we can think about and try to unpack. What makes a producer produce?
Right. I feel it's different for every person, right? It's like, because there's also no one definition of a producer. Right. Like a producer can be many things in different fields, because as you know, if you're a producer in the music industry, it's very different than if you're a producer in Broadway or a producer in film, because just the culture is different and your job is different, and kind of the ways you organize and create. From what I've seen, I feel like I've seen music producers are more creative to me, because they really put their hands in the sound, they put their hands in the art. Whereas you look to the way opposite end of like film, for example, a film producer is probably money. It's probably looking for money and producing that. And then on Broadway, your money and the team, you're producing the team. So it's very interesting. So yeah, what does make a producer produce? I feel like it depends on the goal of the team.
Yeah. But I think the ultimate goal is what? To get it out there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Get something out there. You've produced many shows as well. Props to you. Latido, awesome. So many shows, and I love seeing you pop up and say, I'm on the next thing, and I'm on the next thing, and here's the next book. I love it.
Thank you.
And I think we need to keep showing that. And if some people call it a flex, so be it. It just needs to be seen.
I feel like as long as you're being humble and flexing, that's fine. Like a humble flex, I'm all about it. It's when you're like not humble about flexing that when people are like, get out of here. But if you're genuine about what you're talking about and what you're promoting almost, because like unfortunately, that's what we have to do in the arts. We're hustling every day. We're
Every
hustling,
day.
telling people what we're doing. We're out there being like, look what I can do. Like, here are my skill sets. Here's what I have. Kudos to those who keep to it, because
Yeah.
it is a hard industry. This is not easy. What we're doing is not
Yeah.
easy. Like if it was easy, everybody would do what we do. And
Right.
like I know
Exactly.
people say that in all careers, but it takes a certain person, just like it takes a certain person to be a doctor. It takes a certain person to be a
Yeah,
producer,
for sure.
because personality types as well. And
Yeah.
so, in that question of what makes a producer produce, for you on this scale that I present to all of my guests of one to producer. So one meaning not at all, producer meaning you are a producer through and through, eat, sleep, and breathe, producer life. Where do you sit on that scale, and what makes you, why do you sit there in your opinion, and what makes you produce all the day, all the time, all day,
Oh my gosh. Blowing past 10. Can I be like
Yeah,
an 11, 12, 13 on that?
of course you can go there. If that's what works and qualifies, then yeah.
All day. I am a producer all day. And I realized it in 2015 when I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2 years prior to that, and I've been in the graphic arts. I was prior to music. I was a high-level graphic designer and publishing, children's book publishing. Had so many different publishers in New York and advertising. I used to work at Young and Rubicam as a designer. Then I was a designer at Golden Books, Random House, Bertelsmann. I didn't work in music at all, but I got a life, what do you call it? Like a shift, let's say. I was in an accident and I couldn't work.
Oh,
And I
wow.
turned to music as therapy. And then I stayed on the music path.
Mhm.
What happened 2 years before my diagnosis, I felt like I was in a creative block. I was like, I'm not creating. I'm an artist. I feel like I'm not creating. I'm not inspired. So much was going on in life. I was so stressed out. I was going through a divorce. I was going through so much stuff that made me feel like I wasn't creating. But I realized upon my diagnosis, I was wrong. I was creating a perfect breast cancer. So, as a producer, if you're not creating and putting things out there, you're always creating and maybe you're internalizing. So, for me, it became very toxic to produce inward, to not get what was in my heart out there. I ended up creating sourness in me and
Yeah.
literal cancer. So I realized, how powerful am I? I could produce destruction in my own body. Let me look at that.
Right.
So I started my healing process of then what needs to come out of me so that I can stay healthy and not produce such gnarly things in my system and produce, bad thinking and bad attitudes in myself. And I started to just put things out more. And that also looked like creating dance parties where then I could express musically and other people can too. I started producing events and working with other people to do all kinds of things, from producing dance parties to their weddings to all kinds of stuff like that.
Right.
It's so clear to me that that is my joy. That's totally what, and then I love the whole like, here's the moment. This is the moment. Here are the people. We're producing this night. And from start to finish, that feels great. I love doing that. Rinse and repeat over and over again. Kind of felt like every time I saw Here Lies Love, which I forget the number now, many, many, many times, it was different every night. I felt happy in a different way every night. And I loved that. And I loved knowing that we had something to do with the success of that.
Yeah, the sense of pride is huge.
Oh, huge. And it's so in my heart. It will never leave me. It will never, ever leave me. And the idea of then us getting together and producing the next things over the next many, many years brings me so much like joy and excitement. Like, okay, we've talked about what could we do for City Winery and other things in the future. It is just the beginning. It is just the beginning.
Oh yeah. Like I don't know. Like I'm excited to see what comes next from this team, because we've done something so big and so like industry changing. We made history. And like we can continue making history. And what I do appreciate about our team is that like we're not there is that, but there's also like sometimes how teams like this will fall under the pressure of like everything we do needs to be historical. And like I think our team has a good understanding of like we can creating is the priority, whether it's historic or not is just a byproduct. Like that's not our focus, just like with these very exciting Tony nominations that we have. It's, we're just being nominated at all is huge. And the categories that we're nominated in are all of the categories of the Tonys are great. They all say something about our show. And to be really honest, while sure we didn't get best musical, but we got best score. That's what Here Lies Love is. It's a score.
Yeah.
It's like there's a book, quote unquote, but it's a score. It's music the whole way through. And to me, I feel like that's better than best musical, because that's the industry saying the music of this full on sung through musical is the best, like one of the best. So
honestly, I fully agree with that. I fully agree with that. I'm not just saying this to like soothe myself.
Right.
Again, I come from music. So I feel like the best musical thing is like a popularity contest versus, it just seems like to get best score, like that says a lot. And where do we go from there? I mean, do you have an idea of what you want to create next from scratch? Because I do.
You do. You go first. I feel like,
Okay.
This is your episode. I want to hear your idea before mine.
I have had the exquisite experience of losing my dog last year, right before Here Lies Love. So my dog, Tonka, everybody knew her. She is so amazing. I had her for just about 15 and a half years. And I had her since she was a puppy. And she was with me through cancer healing, through divorce, through it all. And when she finally died of old age, she was so old. My God, Dominic. I mean, it was like
15 and a half.
Yeah, 15 and a half.
Yeah.
What is that times 7? That's a lot.
Right. It's a lot of years.
It's a lot. It's over 100 years, right? So she died in June, and then days later, Here Lies Love. Yeah. So I carried the mourning. So I grieved her. So let me back up for a second. I started to understand the difference between grief and mourning. Grieving and mourning start to look like two different things, and we use those words interchangeably. But I learned this from a really dear friend of mine, Teresa. She was like talking to me about it. So grieving is like that painful feeling, right? And then mourning is the expressions afterward, what you create, what you say, all the things. I'm starting to mourn my dog now as I was mourning Here Lies Love at the end. And I realized, this is showing me I want to tell a story about my dog. Yeah. So most of us know the pain of losing a beloved animal bestie.
It's the worst. Yes.
Brutal. For all the reasons. And she, had her old age. I had to understand and accept that. What I realized is I don't miss her per se, because I understood she was breaking down. It's like you're going to see your Lola at 200 years old and be like, oh, please relieve yourself. You don't need to.
Right.
What I do miss is the relationship.
Yeah.
So I want to write a piece, starting like maybe with a play that turns into a musical, that turns into a Pixar movie.
Yes.
You can dream big.
Right?
about a girl and her dog. So the play itself, I started to write it. I realized when you see the two people acting it out, you don't know who the girl or the dog is. And that was magical. So
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of that, and that's what I want to produce next. And I want it to be in such a way where it's gender expansive, so anyone can play those roles, and it's an exposition on what is a loving relationship, and not even between sexual partners, just platonic. What is a relationship? I
Mhm.
thought about that relationship I had with my dog, and I realized in my lifetime, she's up there in like one of the top 3 most prominent, meaningful, important relationships of my life. A
Mhm.
lot of people can relate to this, and I said, we need to talk about this because yes, it was sad to lose her, but wow, was it amazing to have her.
Yeah. Right. And it's who can't relate to a pet relationship, It's I want to say that's a majority of people in this world. And whatever your pet, whether it's a dog or an iguana or a fish or like whatever, like, it's like your non-person person
Yeah,
that's there for you. Like I look at my dog nowadays and he's only 5, but he's like getting gray hairs on his snout. And I'm like, no, no. I'm like, not allowed. It's too early. But of course, like we have accepted that day's coming. So it's universal. I love that idea. That's fire.
I love that. First of all, that you have a dog that's starting to get, sugar
Yeah.
fur. Let's call it
Yeah,
that.
sugar. I
So
love
think about what I'm saying then, in regards to the story of relationship, and
that.
what kind of stories are shareable in this way. So think about whenever I would hold my dog on a leash, I was holding her hand.
Yep. Yep.
And I
And
was like,
he leads me where he wants to
oh,
go. As much as I
sweet.
like to think I'm walking him, like he's
Yeah,
like,
who's walking in?
yeah, he's like, Dad, we're going through this door. It's all that. And yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited
So
to
that's
see.
my prediction, my producing project. The
Yeah.
future Pixar film.
Or future Pixar film, right? We're gonna push the up dog out of the way, and it's gonna be
Yeah,
Tonka. Like Tonka will be the new Pixar dog,
it'll just be Tonka.
right? And I love that name, Tonka, like
Oh,
for a pup. It's so cute.
she
Where
hated
did
it.
that
I
name
was like,
come from?
so her name, I mean, she was Tonka puppy number 9 when I got her at the rescue. So
Okay.
the funny thing is, I saw her in an ad on Pet Finder. I'm big on rescue dogs. If I could get a rescue dog, it's going to be a rescue dog. I
Mhm.
saw her and I was like, oh my God, she's mine. I love this pup. She was this tiny little black dog. And I have such a thing for the black pets because they say there's like people don't adopt black animals as much as they do white animals. And oh,
Oh, I thought it was
oh
just
yeah,
black cats. I thought it was just black cats, but
dogs too, all of it. So I contacted the shelter and I said, I want this dog. And I said, sorry, Tonka's gone. She was adopted. And I was like, oh,
oh,
okay, not meant to be. Two
yeah,
days later, they call me and say that it fell through. I said, she's mine.
yeah.
And then I went to go get her. And it was really like, if you talk
Yeah.
universe talk, it
Hmm.
was like she was delivered to me and it was amazing. She was
Yeah,
there for me, John Mike, for all the hardest things. So I
yeah.
want to honor that. I want to honor her in a piece of
Mhm.
playwriting.
Yeah, and she'll live on forever when you do that. So it's
Yes.
like I don't want to make you start crying, but like she will be around for all
Yeah.
the time because of that. Generations will appreciate Tonka, and
Yeah. Yeah.
will help so many more beyond you, which is very cool.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the magic of producing because you can take a slice of life, as difficult and painful as it could be, and then show the world, me too, also. We also know this. We know this pain. And then everyone's just sitting there being like, my dog, fill in the blank name, my
yeah.
cat. And that's
Mhm.
what I want. I want to see people holding their chest and being like, oh my God, I miss my pup.
Yeah.
I miss my iguana.
Yeah.
All the
I feel
things.
like I could see like, my producer brain is turning on. It's like I can see like partnership events where it's like movies outside where you bring your dog or your cat and watch
Oh, I
this
love it. See?
see
Producer
this
brain.
show. right? It all comes together when, you think about it. But that's great. That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Um,
Working on. What about
yeah,
you?
like I feel like, one thing that I've fallen into is the idea of accessibility.
Mm,
And after going through this Broadway turn, we've seen just how inaccessible Broadway is when art is supposed to be an accessible thing for
right,
all.
right, right,
The main gatekeeper being money,
right,
and it's financially how much it costs. And through Here Lies Love, I met so many incredible producers, but also so many incredible artists who have so
right.
much to offer beyond just being hired to do a show. And so what I'm currently trying to create a kind of, I've always been thinking like, what is my life and purpose after Latido? Latido is fantastic. It basically runs itself, which is fantastic. And I have a wonderful staff. And, my co-founder, a few years ago, he stepped back and became more advisory because he had other opportunities to come along. And so I'm feeling like my time is arriving and it's time to let the child become a teenager essentially because Latido is 12 years old. So like,
Oh,
to
congrats.
thank you. So let Latido become a teenager and honestly let somebody who is part of the community step up and see where they can bring the brand. And so for me, connecting with these artists through our show and afterwards, a lot of them, like I said, have other talents. And I think there's the main talent of like people that are musical theater singers or just musicians and artists, creating shows around them that kind of bring the community together, making those accessible for people to attend and enjoy, and bringing these names to communities that might not see them on a regular basis. For example, a fairly recent friend, Vincent Rodriguez III, I
Yes.
brought him to Pittsburgh. Nobody knows, no, not that nobody knows it, but nobody's seen him in Pittsburgh. And when we brought him here, the community was like, "Oh my God, he's coming to Pittsburgh! Like what? Wow!" And so it's like finding those opportunities for him in terms of my goal of producing more accessible art. And I think beyond that, in terms of what other things people can offer, Vinny has more talent beyond just being a musical theater actor. He does martial arts, he does improv, he does magic, he does like all these things that
Wow.
it's like, well, how can we bring that to everybody here? And also, like, he's become a teaching artist because he wants to offer that part of himself out to people. So while there's producing shows, there's also linking that with education and saying like,
Hmm.
have this artist who is around that can teach workshops or lead, yeah, workshops and classes and making that accessible. So it's like the barrier in Pittsburgh, where I'm based, is that you either have to go to one of the major universities like Carnegie Mellon University or Point Park University that house all the arts classes, or you have to be cast in one of the big regional theaters here like Pittsburgh CLO, or you must go through their musical theater academy to get access to people like Vinny. There's no place in the world here, at least in this market, where it's like, oh, Vincent Rodriguez is in town, he's offering a class, you're free to or you're free to register to take this class if you want. Like where there's no barrier beyond the fact that he's here. There is a registration fee, obviously, because Vinny's an artist and needs to make money as well. But beyond that, it's like what organizations can we partner with that can maybe subsidize 10 tickets to this class, and offer it for the student who can't afford it or the working professional who's in between gigs who wants to train and learn something new maybe or hone their current craft. And so Vinny and I are going down this like experimental path of what does it look like to work with him as his producer to produce these
Wow.
education show weeks of like in Pittsburgh it was 3 days. It was a rehearsal one day, show the next, a day of workshops the next day. What are the different combinations of that? So we're looking forward to what's next in June, bringing him to Washington, D.C. during a Pride Week. Like, is there a world where he connects with Capital Pride during AAPI Pride Night that week and then does a workshop and then ends with a show in a partnership with Metro Stage, which is a smaller organization, the arts organization in DC? What does that revenue stream look like to not only benefit him, but benefit all the people involved? whether that's financially or artistically. So for me, like there's a lot of dreams, but that's the most immediate one. That's like, if this works with Vinny, how can I apply this to other artists? Like, how can I then produce these things for other people and bring them to communities that they're not necessarily a part of? Like, for example, how do I bring you, DJ CherishTheLuv, to a community that has a lot of music, but DJs don't come there, to not just play, but interact and teach and kind of offer their experiences and see how they can affect that community. How can we bring someone like G Tongi to an AAPI community, or even an expat Filipino community, where she can talk about the reasons why she moved away from the Philippines and came to America, like kind of perspectives that people don't usually hear. So, and in the same vein of like, it's a registration thing, but what organizations can we partner with that can subsidize participation for people that can't? And who knows, maybe Gitanji does a show, like maybe she sings again, and we see, what that comes of it. So that's where I feel I'm headed. And I think that transition where I'm in right now as a producer is like, I can let one of my team members step into the executive producer chair, and then because of Here Lies Love and our cohort, leverage those connections that I've made organically to then make this whole new series of things that benefit everybody involved, the community, participants, the artists, the producing company, and just all in the vein of building community, of course, at the end of the day. So, and accessibility. So that's my next dream, and that involves everybody. That's an easy connect to everybody on our team.
I love how your brain works.
Thank you.
Because future me, aka intuition, is telling me, Girl and Her Dog, Latido Productions, let's try it in a few cities.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Let me keep writing, and then let's test a 45-minute thing and see what that's like. And everyone can bring their dogs or cats.
Exactly. Everyone can bring their dogs, and like the network that we've built over the last 12 years, Latido has resident cities. So there is a thing, the biggest dream I've always had is for an artist to do what's called a Latido tour. They like go to our major cities and we do the same show, but in LA, in Vegas, in Chicago, in DC, in Pittsburgh, in New York, and then that, like what you're saying, it'll allow you to get feedback from 6 different markets and see what people have to say about it. It's kind of like a souped up 29-hour reading, except all across the nation. So,
I love that. Okay, audience who's listening, you're witnessing Producing Live.
right. And we are Asian, and we're producing. And it's producing while
Asian and producing live in the moment right now.
Right? It's like when you go to art shows and there's like live art. Like that's like what we're doing right now. And we're giving it to you all for free. That's where we are.
I mean, this is so beautiful. And the synergy of this is such a thing that I have yearned for I've been freelancing and independent since 1999. So for years and years and years, freelancing was a luxury. It meant I can do work anywhere, anyhow, at any time, with anyone I like. Nowadays, freelancing is not a luxury. It's how you survive, because there aren't steady opportunities anymore. So that said, we have trained ourselves to be like that tough-skinned creative. And I love having that, because I know work here, work there, work with this person, figure it out, and create something. So I love that we're doing this. I love that we're doing this while Asian. I love that we're doing this while Filipino. I mean, you know what? Actually, let me ask you a question, because the title I got, Producing While Asian, what does that mean for all of us? What does it mean for you?
Yeah, I think it means breaking barriers. It's like you're producing, yes, but like producing as someone who looks like me is radical, it's innovative, it's different, and it's game changing, because we bring in a different perspective and a different culture into something that's seemingly so set in its ways. And like our friend Georgina, we're disruptors just by existing in the space. We didn't have to say anything. Just being in the space is disruptive enough because
Yeah.
they're like, well, what's this person going to do?
Yeah.
What's that person going to bring to the page? And I actually witnessed that. And it doesn't even have to be like a people of color in comparison to a person who is white situation.
Mhm.
I witnessed that this week in our own home country in the Philippines. It's like like Phil-Am next to Filipino. Like I came into this market with this radical Latino thing that no one's ever seen before, and bringing in cast members of the touring Miss Saigon and
Yeah.
American co-producers and all of that. And people were coming up to me and they were like, "Who are you? Like, where did you come from? Like, what is this? We want
Wow.
to see more of this thing you brought because it did exactly that. It disrupted the norm. It's not what people are seeing." So I feel like a thing that this show, what I love about the show is that we also show the different meanings of producing. So,
Yeah.
we're disrupting, we're doing that. And so yeah, it's like producing while Asian for me means that. It means, coming in and being that, just physically being that different perspective without even saying anything at first. And just knowing that I already bring something different, which you do as
I
well.
love that. I love that so much. Producing while Asian for me means being myself.
Hmm.
Producing what's coming from my heart and my brilliant mind and my creativity, and not wishing I was someone else and
Yeah.
wishing that I had other opportunities. We have lots of opportunities that are
Hmm.
plenty good enough.
Totally. And I
Yeah.
think by qualifying producing with the with Asian while Asian part, it keeps us from, I guess assimilating is the word, from assimilating into what producing already is defined as. It allows
Mhm.
us to stay different. Like you said, it allows you to stay yourself and be
Yeah.
like, yes, I'm a producer. I identify as a producer, but I also identify as Asian, and I also produce or identify as a Filipino. I also identify as a female presenting being, like that, all of that to be said. So it's exciting. I feel like we could talk for like hours and hours, Cynthia, about all these things.
Hey, this is JD from the Hyman Podcast, a place to have hard conversations revolving around the overall human experience. We tackle topics such as racism, the American justice system, and even headlining news such as the Alex Murdaugh saga. This season, we're going to continue to tackle more hard-hitting topics, and I'm excited to take you on that journey. The Hyman Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. The Hyman Podcast is produced in conjunction with the Hyman brand and is part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
I want to make sure that I get more out of you before our time is up. But before I kind of bring you the kind of penultimate question of our time together today, Here Lies Love also brought you love. Can
Yeah.
our audience hear that quick story of how you and your partner love match are now together because of,
They're incredible.
not only brought you a producing community, but it brought you, a
Love.
love. I love it. It brought you love.
It's really funny. I'm going to tell this story. I thank you for bringing this up. This is a
Yeah.
really special story. So the first people powered disco hour night that I had the honor and the pleasure of producing with Here Lies Love, and those were the DJ after party sets.
Mhm.
We had planned many of them. We got to get four, maybe five. I forget right now. Let's say five because that sounds really nice. The very first night, which was the night after Fatboy Slim, Norm, I love you. After
Yeah.
his, he passed the baton to me. He actually held an invisible baton and said, "Here you go, Cherish. You're the DJ now for the after parties. You're creating these events. You're producing." So I produced the People Powered Disco Hours for Here Lies Love, and wow, were they great.
Yeah.
And that included myself, Griffin, Maxwell Brooks, Apple the App.
Mhm. Fina
Wow, wow,
Morales.
wow. Oh my God. And I wish you could see the list of who we had like to come.
Oh.
But anyhow, on the very first night, I thought, here I am at the peak of my career, and setting that is now the norm. Where I'm DJing on Broadway,
Yeah.
the first ever Filipino woman to DJ on Broadway, and still the only. And I looked in the mirror as I was walking out of my apartment, and I said, I did this. I did this. I didn't need a partner to complete me, to bring me to this place. I did this. I was at
Yeah.
the highest point of my life, and I said, I don't need anybody. Look at me. I'm
Mhm.
solo powered energy, total solo powered.
Love it.
That night,
Well, the universe was like, really?
you know, it's a funny thing. So that night I go and start to set up my DJ booth, and I meet for the first time our A2, most wonderful Chris Devaney. She
Mhm.
goes to set up my DJ booth, and we connect in all the most amazing ways.
Mhm.
And she is like my adventure partner, my love. We've traveled cross country. We love each other so much. And it came from this night created by these opportunities to get together at Here Lies Love. Both of us meeting at the highest points of our lives. So think about that. Like, we tend to meet partners when we're like, I need someone to complete me. I feel bad. I'm lonely. But we were like good as solo human beings.
Yeah.
And then we met each other in our power.
Hmm.
And we've been inspiring people in our journey.
Yeah, I love watching all of your updates on social. I'm like, that's
so
it. Coupling
wonderful.
relationship goals like these two. It's amazing. And just knowing that it's like genuinely, it doesn't come from trauma, it doesn't come from dependency. Like, it's just two people who love themselves who now love each other. And it's
It's such a new,
awesome.
it's a thing I thought could never happen.
Right.
And I'm glad we could put this out there and tell people, work on yourself.
Hmm.
Will attract someone who has worked on themselves. It is really kind of neat, you know?
It's
that
weird how it happens.
that could be a whole other show we produce.
Right. Like, work on yourself and you attract other people who worked on themselves. Like, I feel like there's a sexier title in there, but for sure. And but wasn't part of the story too, like, she offered to like help set up your booth and you're like, no, I like it a certain way, and then you left and came back and it was
It
like,
is the
did it?
coolest story. So yeah, the actual details were, I walked up with my DJ gear, and me being a woman who DJs, I've often been faced with, I get to the booth with my gear and they say, so when's your boyfriend showing up?
Ooh,
Or like, oh, are you're the DJ? What, do you need help setting up your gear? Oh,
yeah. Very like
it's
mansplaining.
oh, don't
Yeah.
even start
Ew.
on it. Don't get me started on. We can do a whole other show called
Right?
mansplaining. But anyway, so
Yeah.
I'm just tough skinned and traumatized and kind of like,
Yeah.
really obnoxious about nobody touches my gear because I know how to set it up, and don't doubt me. It's like,
Yeah.
after 12 years of DJing, I shouldn't have this attitude, but I do. So
Sure.
I get to the booth and Chris says, hi, I'm Chris D. I'm your A2. I'm going to help you set up your booth. May I help you set up your gear?
Mhm.
And I turned to her and I was like, no, I do this myself all the time. I don't need help. So I turned to talk to Cheryl, our production person, and she was talking to me about setting up. And then I turn back to my booth and I see it all set up and Chris is smiling. And I was just like, oh my God, who touched my gear? I surveyed the area and I said in my head, who touched my gear? And on top of that, set it up perfectly.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
then we just clicked on all the things. We started like this really fun friendship, and we just realized, oh God, we love each other so much. And then we keep going on adventures and traveling and just
Oh.
enjoying each other's creative company. And coming from this show, it's like I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
I
It's
love it. I love it.
like the show created, or actually the show attracted people to us that were meant to be our kind of next ventures almost. And venture in whatever sense of the word, whether it be love, whether it be work, whether it be both of those things, or friendship. Because yeah, like Here Lies Love brought you Chris for that one purpose. And then like, I met Vinny. Like I
Yeah.
was not supposed to meet Vinny. Like the way that happened was like we had that concert that we did in October
Yeah.
to raise money for Maui, and Vina was the headliner. But then we
Love
had
you,
some
Dina.
Love you, Vina. Like we had some folks who couldn't do it anymore and they dropped out. And so Laura said, you know, let's open it up to alumni, which we wanted to. And then she
And
said,
love you, Laura.
and speaking of alumni, she said Vincent Rodriguez III is in town. And I was like, who is that? And she was like, it's Josh Chan from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And I was like, shut the front door. And so
Wow.
randomly reached out to his manager. And Vinny was like, I'm in town. Like, let's do it. Like, I'm, Here Lies Love family of forever. Because he was the DJ off Broadway, or one of the people that covered the DJ off Broadway. And like, he came into this concert and we became fast friends. And now here we are working on these projects together. And it's like,
Yeah.
everybody has their version of that Here Lies Love populated into our lives. And it's phenomenal. So again, we're still winning. Like, we don't need,
Oh,
like, Tony
totally.
nominations are just the cherry. Like, we've been winning, like,
Yeah.
since the show closed. And it's great. It's beautiful.
There's so many wins that are not just, the business part of it, the social part of it, the spiritual part of it, the creative part of it, the what's coming next part of it. Those are all the gifts that keep on giving.
Yeah. And like
Love
the
it.
friendships that came out of it, right? It's
Yeah.
like, I've met a lot of quote unquote famous people, but like, I'm sure you've met Vinny. Vinny's the most
Yeah.
down to earth human being
Yeah.
ever in the
He's a
world. I'm
cool
like,
guy.
who are you? Yeah, he's like, do this thing called Marco Polo so we can send videos back and forth. I'm like,
Yeah.
we want to do that? Like, wow, okay. Like I do that with my siblings. That's funny. And so it's
I
you
love
know,
that.
but it's great. And again, we have other things to talk about after the show. But the last thing I would love to close our conversation with is two things. One is, where can people find you if they want to connect and collaborate and work with you, or just get to know you? And then the second part of that is, what would you like to say to anybody that's listening who may be in a space of, I want to do what you guys are doing, or maybe even in a downtrodden place of like, words that, how can you give them a little bit of hope to look forward to, in the future, and from your experiences, because like you've, to the uneducated ear, because we're on a podcast, you've hit the darkest of dark and you found the light,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and so like, what can you confer upon them? So how can people find you, and then your parting words for this episode?
Thank you, Don Mike, for having me. I
course.
mean, and to be able to share and to see me and I see you, to, for us to see each other is a really beautiful thing. Folks can find me on Instagram mainly. I have not dived into the TikTok, and I'm really trying not to. But
We're too old for that. We're too old for TikTok. Like, if I'm going to go into TikTok, I'm gonna hire an intern. Like, my intern can do my TikTok.
I'm resisting. But anyway, if not the TikTok, then you can find me on the Instagram at DJ Cherish the Love, LUV, not LOVE. I think that's someone else. But DJ Cherish the Love on Instagram, and DM me. I always answer DMs. I think it's fun. And to those who, I feel like everybody is creative. And I was just telling Giselle this earlier. I really think that Filipinos are extremely special. Whether you're Filipino or not, I think everybody is innately creative. I think Filipinos, especially, I think, are super
like
gender expansive, and yeah, we're magical.
Yeah. Also, like, not that there's like an oppression Olympics going on, but it's like, when a culture has been downtrodden and colonized so many times, like, it seems to me, in my uneducated, non-PhD opinion, but just my observations in life, being a Filipino creative of color, that like the communities that bring, like, everyone brings art, but the richest art and the most, kind of deepest creative things are the ones who unfortunately have been oppressed the most. And we just have a lot of material to work with. But it's kind of like, I feel like that's why I would say that's why I feel Filipinos are really gifted in the arts, because we just have a lot to draw from.
Yeah, we're also, like you said, I think that when you're going through difficult times, it is giving you wisdom. It is giving you wisdom that is yours and it is unique. And even though it's yours and unique, it is also relatable. And I think that if you're going through anything, if you've got any kind of like thing that's like nagging you or a struggle, create with that. Create with it. It's really, shitty experiences make great manure. It's so true.
True, yeah. Like
It's
plants
so
grow out
true.
of shit. So it's like,
Listen,
this is what it is.
shitty experiences make great manure for creativity.
Correct.
And
correct.
when you get it out of you, it's out of you.
Yeah.
Keep in mind my breast cancer experience. I feel like it is, I don't even doubt this, that I created that because I was locking things inside me.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking whatever my ideas weren't good enough. The older I got, I was like, hey, my ideas are totally better than that person's ideas. Why are they in the movies?
Yeah. It's that, the comparison thing of like, you don't want to put other people down, because we're not trying to be like crab mentality here, but
Of course not.
it's also like, if you can do that, so can I. Like, not even about being better, I can do it too. And
I
like,
can do it too. Yeah. And in fact, listen to that part of you that says, I should do this.
Yeah.
I better do this. And then I need to do this.
Mhm.
Listen to that.
It's that whole idea of like, we all the way back to earlier in our conversation, you have one life. If you have one life, make the most of it. And if your gut, that's what I'm working on, is listening to my gut.
Yeah.
And because it's hard to listen to your gut, because you're like, there's so much self-doubt sometimes and so much imposter syndrome that you're like, I don't know.
And you know what? You think like people don't want to hear it. I'm gonna say, I want to hear it. Do you want to hear it, Don Mike?
Of course. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm talking to you and talking to all of our colleagues, because I want to hear it. I want to hear, what is it that you want to be and are capable of.
We want to hear it. We
Yeah.
want to hear it. Yep.
And yeah, to the person listening, we're here to help you make it happen, or help you make it happen, make you understand that you can do it too. You don't have to ask somebody for the permission to do and be. So, but this was awesome. I'm so glad you could come on the show, DJ CherishTheLuv, Cynthia.
Thank you.
It's weird for me. I can't call you Cynthia. That's weird. Like,
No, I'm going to tell you something. It's really special, Don Mike, because you are onto something when you call me Cynthia, because people know me through creativity and working and stuff, and me as DJ CherishTheLuv or Cherish. But once people start to click and bond with me and love me, and I love them back, they start calling me Cynthia.
It's awesome. It's names are a powerful thing, and that's a whole nother episode for another day.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you could be here, and this is definitely not the last time you'll be here. So just know,
Awesome.
this is the point to you and many other conversations in the future. So thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope
thank you.
You get lots of people looking to communicate with you.
So great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Producing While Asian podcast. Our theme song was created by Luckstock. We're produced by Press Play Podcasts, and the show is edited by Michael Santos Sandoval. If you have a moment, please leave a rating and a review, and send any ideas you have to producingwhileasian@gmail.com. To follow us, stay updated, or to read our blog, visit www.producingwhileasian.com.